So I'm here with Victor Avila, and you're running for city council. Is that correct in Southlake?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about yourself and what caused you to want to run for this position.
I'm a retired federal agent with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. I have almost 2 decades of public service, and I want to continue that public service as a city councilman for Southlake. I medically retired from this, from my position as an agent. I was shot in the line of duty in 2011, and my partner was killed when we were ambushed in Mexico, and that led to my early retirement. However, I've been in public service most of my life, and I want to be able to give some of that public service back, and that's the only thing I know how to do. And the best way for me to do it is to represent the citizens of Southlake.
Can you tell me a little bit about what happened in Mexico? You mentioned that you had a partner that was killed with you.
Yes.
And I heard you say that, and I thought, oh man, it's got to be heart-wrenching on the one hand.
It is a tragic story. I was stationed in Mexico City. I was a U.S. diplomat and worked with ICE and at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. We were sent on a mission from Mexico City up to Monterrey.
Okay.
And in February 15 of 2011, the Zetas cartel ambushed us on the road, and people want to see it. There's a big documentary on YouTube called Agent Down.
Agent Down?
Agent Down.
Okay.
On YouTube.
And that's about you?
It's about the ambush, and
okay.
it was done by Sky News.
Okay.
And they could go and check it out. And if you Google my name, you'll see a lot of the...
How do you spell your last name?
Avila.
Avila. Victor
Avila.
Avila. Okay, great.
And you could check it out. You can see my story, plus also a lot of the issues that I stand on. I've been on Fox News and other news media talking about border security and all that. But going back to what happened to us, when we were ambushed, attacked, I was shot 3 times, and Agent Zapata was killed in line of duty. And there's a big controversy, and a lot of people still 9 years later don't know about it, because a couple of the weapons that were used against us were Fast and Furious weapons. And if you know anything about Fast and Furious, a botched operation by the Obama administration and ATF. And so to this day, we're still searching for answers for that.
Right.
But anyway, nevertheless, I came up. I'm a survivor. I want to be able to give back. You know, you go through a lot of issues. What are you going to do after this? You go through something that's traumatic, and I'm also big on talking about mental health, because I went through those issues, PTSD and depression and anxiety, and I know how important that is, especially now in policing, how it's becoming a lot more difficult to be a law enforcement officer in this country than it was just maybe 10, 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so I want to be able to bring all my knowledge, not just in law enforcement, but as a diplomat. I did a lot of liaison with governments. I was able to bring people together. I was able to internationally, locally, state level, federal level, really bring people together to get results done. And I think I could bring that to the council, really listen to the citizens of Southlake, and really represent them. And we've kind of forgotten that the representatives are there for the people. Right. And that's what I want to continue.
Okay. So let me ask you a little bit of a different question. You may not get this question a lot, but with your career in law enforcement and as a diplomat, one of the things that we're really concerned about is the breakdown of the family, because the breakdown of the family is the foundational breakdown that is contributing to the breakdown and the problems in society. Can you comment to that at all from what you've seen in your own career? Just go ahead.
I've seen it many times. Before I was a federal agent, I was a federal probation officer, and I was also a state parole officer. Mm-hmm. So I've seen the criminal justice system at different levels, and I've seen the separation of families. I've seen how when the father is missing in the household, how those negative statistics just shoot up. The chances of a child in that home to become criminally active, drop out of school, no longer being an active member of the community, those statistics shoot through the roof. Right. And so this cycle begins, and guess what? That child has a greater chance of being involved in the criminal justice system as a juvenile. Right. And the drug use, drug abuse, drug addiction, you name it. Just by the father missing in the household. I've seen it many times, either the mother or the father, because of drug abuse, because of criminal activity. And so it's one of the most heart-wrenching things to see, is that separation separation of family, because I've done it. When you arrest someone, a lot of people vilify ICE because they say you separate kids from their family. Well, every time a person gets arrested with their children next to them, they get separated at that time. And it's also important to place the accountability with those parents.
Right.
They made the choice, and sometimes they don't think further or ahead enough to think my actions are going to then have a ripple effect on my children and maybe grandchildren.
And I'm glad you said that, because the effects of family separation, and I'm going to talk about the effects of divorce, are not just between the two people. It's generational and transgenerational.
Absolutely.
And when people think about divorce, they don't think about my divorce is going to affect my grandchildren in a negative manner. But one thing that you said that I'd want to follow back a little bit more on, you said that certain statistics, the negative statistics, skyrocket. They're not just an incremental.
No.
Can you give a little bit more flavor to that? Because we've talked about issues of the criminal justice system, dropping out of high school, getting pregnant outside of wedlock, abortion, murder, gang activity, mental health problems, physical health problems, on and on and on.
All of the above.
And these don't just last for a year or two.
No, this is a life cycle. This is a life cycle, and the difficult thing about this life cycle is very difficult to break.
Right.
Because once you're embedded in that life cycle, what do you need? You need education to sometimes break the cycle.
Right.
You need smarter choices and not commit a crime to break that cycle.
Right.
Not get pregnant at an early age out of wedlock. All these things that you just mentioned, mental health. It's very difficult to break that cycle once you're in it. And
right.
so the education of a family nucleus is so important to try to get back to where a two-parent home
right.
still exists.
Right.
And it doesn't say that because you were raised by a single family. I've seen many families that are raised by a single mother that the kids turned out great. Right. And it's important to note that. Right. But they are the exception. Right. And the statistics will prove the other way, is that those kids now, that we're talking about the negative statistics, those children now are fighting an uphill battle for the rest of their lives. Right. So let me take this one step further then, because we've talked about issues where two parents are doing something. In the state of Texas, we have in the Texas Family Code 6.001, divorce for the cause of insupportability. Now, insupportability is nothing that you have to prove. It only has to be, a person can just say, I want a divorce because my marriage is irreconcilable, has an irreconcilable difference, it's insupportable. And the person who is on the other end of that says, well, wait a minute, I don't want to divorce. You may be cheating with somebody else, you may have found somebody else. I want our family to stay together. I do not want to see our family destroyed. But you go to a family court, and it's guaranteed 100% without exception in the state of Texas, for any reason, for no reason, the person can make up a reason, that the person who files the petition for divorce wins the divorce. The other person is always defenseless. And as you mentioned, this is what if you go back in history, this is basically what Vladimir Lenin did in Bolshevik Russia. He wanted to tear apart the society so that he could impose communism. What was one of the first things that he did? He changed the family code back in Russia so that divorce could take place and you had no defense. And we talked a little bit, and I said, it's really bad in a system where you almost wish that you were accused of rape or murder, because in rape and murder you get what? You get the due process and the presumption of innocence. In divorce, you have neither. And you can go through a divorce and a judge can say, by the way, Mr. So-and-so, you're talking about fatherlessness, Mr. Father here or Mr. Mother here, you only get to be a visitor in your child's life right now. And even though you have this nice house, you have to sell this house to pay your spouse's attorney bills. Right. And by the way, and if you don't pay this child support, which we're going to put upon you, you can go to jail. And now you're a bankrupt person. What just happened? I was in this marriage. You're in jail serving a penalty in Texas. And we've known people that have done this on the verge of filing for bankruptcy. They get thrown into jail. Texas is not supposed to have debtors' prisons, but they do. But what does that do to a child to see his or her mother or father in jail, or to see the fact that he or she can no longer see a mother? Right. The best interest of the child, if whatever this means, is to be raised in an intact family with his or her natural mother and father. We hope surrounded by a very strong extended family. Of course. And we hope by a society
that supports and understands the value of marriage. And you've seen the devastation that has happened through family separation.
Absolutely.
Both in instances like this, but I'm sure in instances of divorce as well.
Absolutely. Family violence, I've seen it a lot there. I've also seen a lot of in the most recent times where families or the parents decide, even if they can't even get along, will decide to stay together for the sole purpose of the children. And a lot of people sometimes don't understand, but because of what you just said, they say, you know what, we're going to have to somehow live together for the sake of our children, because they know the impact that it will have on the children in the long run.
Right.
And so they say, you know what, we're gonna not go through this divorce. We're gonna somehow live in this house together. And I've seen many of those cases where sometimes it works out.
Right.
Sometimes it doesn't. You get the family violence, and you get because they try to do it, but they just can't live together.
Right.
But it's absolutely part of the whole equation. Yes.
Yeah. But so basically, you're saying then, as a very last recourse, divorce should be permitted under some instances, but it should not be the first action that somebody takes, and the state should not have a policy that automatically grants divorce without any cause whatsoever.
Absolutely, I think there should be a due process. Let's put it that way. Let's have due process to hear both sides of that relationship, to see what really go on, rather than just automatically side on the side of the petitioner.
So you also have that background in law enforcement, and I just want to get your understanding about this. Do you think that in situations like families, should it be resolved in a court? Or should we say, you know what, you guys got married in the church, go to the church. If the judge says, if a person goes to the judge should say, sorry, you know what, I'm not going to grant this, see a counselor. Do something, fix your marriage. Because the devastation is so great. And like I said, you've seen it. Hey, Peter, how you doing? But you've seen it in person. And so, as a person who's on the city council, what would you do to try to advocate for families?
I definitely would advocate for the family unit to remain, and to sometimes kind of go back and look at what we've lost in the last 30, 40 years. But I agree with you there with what's happening with the courts, what's happening with just in society in general with these families, and how do we go about in continuing to keep them together, keep the children together, have them even in these cases of divorce, that not necessarily have these get sided one way or the other immediately, but rather listen to both sides. And I agree with you a lot with the church. When I got married, I had to go through the church. I had to go through a priest. My wife and I had to fill out a questionnaire.
This was the Catholic wedding?
It was a Catholic wedding.
You tell me more about. Oh, go ahead. Finish first.
So we went through a questionnaire of compatibility.
Yeah.
They want to know that if I answer that I want to have 4 kids, and my soon-to-be wife answers that she never wants to have children, there's an issue already there.
Right.
They have very specific questions about finances. How are you going to deal with real-world questions?
Right.
And so I kind of tend to agree a little bit on, are we going to then immediately send it to the courts when there's an issue at the marriage, when it started off in the church?
Right.
And so I do like that if you're a person of faith as I am, to have it, maybe try to get it resolved at that level first before it gets to the court system.
So and as a Catholic, if you want to have a Catholic marriage, there's a specific process that you have to go through. Because you believe as a Catholic that marriage is a religious institution instituted by God.
It's a sacrament.
Right. And there are many responsibilities toward that. But the idea in the Catholic Church, as I understand it, is that the marriage is indissoluble. That is what you have. That you have a position that you married your wife married you. Your understanding was this is for life.
Right.
Until one of us dies.
Correct.
This is what God intended for us. So my question to you is this, that if that is your religious belief, and you got married because you did so in the Catholic faith with this understanding, why can a state say that your religious belief doesn't make a difference? Is this not the state imposing itself into a matter of religion? Is this not a violation of religious liberty of the two people that came together in agreement.
It's a great point, and we've seen it like in Colorado with the baking of a cake for two people that the person doesn't believe in, a marriage between two men or two women,
right?
And that person, because of their Christian beliefs, gets vilified for not wanting to do that. So absolutely, our religious belief, as you know, comes first, and that's why it's part of our First Amendment.
Right.
And it's important for the courts to recognize that.
So the courts, in other words, then, if I hear you, and clarify for me if I misunderstand you here, but because you are taking marriage as a religious step, joining it under God, the state really should have very little say, should not be able to come and destroy your marriage unilaterally.
Right, and it's a matter of because it's religious and it's legal at the same time, right? And so we give the state the power when we went in there and signed the marriage license as well.
Do you think that we should even have that then? And the reason that I'm saying that is this, because the state will destroy things. It's, we have supposedly, whether you believe in the separation of church and state or not, the state is not supposed to come into the church and order the church, here's how you're going to baptize people. Here's how you're going to perform the Lord's Supper. By the way, when you preach, you've got to have this type of a pump. They're not going to do that. They're not going to settle issues of doctrine. And yet marriage is, in the Catholic Church, a sacrament. It is a religious sacrament. It is a means of grace to you and to your wife. And it is a means of blessing to your family and to society. So why should the state even be able to say, we're going to claim legal authority to strip you of this, to strip your children of the protection of a father or a mother, of an entire family?
Where I would say sometimes the state has the right to do that is because some of these marriages and some of these people involved in these marriages never should have been there in the beginning.
Right.
And so sometimes there are those cases where there's crime, there's drug abuse, there's child abuse.
You're right.
And so someone does have to come in and take care of that. And that's where there is some legal aspect to it and protection, for those children, especially on cases of child abuse.
So what you're saying then, and this is where I would go with it, divorce as a remedy for some type of bad behavior. It should not just be given out like, here, I'm going to pass you some candy. Or another stimulus check.
Correct.
So anyway, tell us again what position you're running for. I'd like to have other people know about you here, because it looks like you're a person that will stand up for families. You're going to stand up for fathers, for mothers, for children.
Well, I definitely I bring integrity, and I bring all my knowledge that I've lived, not just personally, but in my professional career as well. To really, I'm big on public safety, and I want Southlake to remain as safe as it is. And we've seen human trafficking cases in Southlake. I don't want that to continue. And so
human trafficking, you know what one of the biggest risk factors for human trafficking is? Coming from a divorced family.
Oh yeah, I've seen the victims. I've rescued the victims and the kids countless times. So and how easily they get coerced by these traffickers, and so it's a horrific crime. And so I want to, again, I'm running for Southlake City Council, place number 6. And I'm hoping to gain your support to be able to represent.
You've got it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the party.